Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Or maybe I should say buenos dias, since we're going to be talking about Mexico. As you know, this session we're looking at Mexico. But before we do first, and again, so before, like I said, before we cross the border, those of you in the earlier session would have already heard me announce this, but I'd like to say it now to everyone. Finished Vehicle Logistics is partnering with the AIG to launch a new conference, and it'll be this August in Baltimore. Folks, it's called, you have some flyers in front of you, so you've got all the details. It's called Import Export North America. It's August 13th. It's a one-day conference with a reception at the end. It's in the middle of, I think, what is a crab fest or something like that week. So it's a popular time to be in Baltimore. So we invite you all to come and do some get some crabs and then talk about logistics with us. So it'll be looking at all aspects of the import-export supply chain, port processing, inland carriage, all the connections, ro-ro, etc. Like I said, we're doing that together with AIG, so we're really looking forward to that and look forward to see some of you there. And if you're a big fan if you're a fan of The Wire, you know that show, I would recommend to rewatch season 2, which is set in the Port of Baltimore. So just as a little primer for that. Okay, second piece of let's say housekeeping. We've been talking about this live all day. Anybody in the back, by the way, there are plenty of seats, so you don't have to be like the kids in the back of the classroom. You can actually sit down in front. Anyway, we've been talking about this live side all day, but this session we actually really do want you to log in, because after we have our panel discussion, we're going to be doing some voting, some live voting. Our sponsors have provided some questions, trying to get your feedback. So it would be great to get, like I said, that you get online so you can participate in the voting. It always gives a quite interesting, view of what the market is thinking. But obviously, for that to work, we'll need you to actually get on. So obviously, the instructions are on the screen. A kind of short thing. You might have had some technical issues because the Wi-Fi changes when you move around the hotel, so you might have to reset your Wi-Fi or log back in again if you haven't done it so far. So I'd recommend you to do that. On your badge is your delegate number, so it's actually on your badge in case you didn't realize it. You're wondering where you get that. It starts with 141, and yeah, so you can. In the meantime, you can also use it to ask questions, make comments, share ideas to me. And I can ask the question to our panel. So that's that. We'll come back to that again, and we'll remind you to log in. Maybe another piece of housekeeping. Also on your desk are some evaluation forms, which we really would like you to fill in. If you're staying till the end of the conference, you obviously can wait until you've seen the rest and give us a fuller feedback. But if you're leaving earlier, then please do fill them in. You can leave them on the table or hand them to any one of our staff. We use those. We really do an analysis of that, and your opinions are immediately tried to feed back into how we plan the next year's events. There's also a really nice prize. We'll do a draw at the end of the conference, so it's another reason to stick around. And there's a basket of nice treats, and I think including 2 complimentary meals at this hotel. So do fill in and do stick around. Finally, after this session, directly after this session, there's going to be some buses leaving directly, I think around 5:30, to go to our gala dinner venue, which is hosted by our premier sponsor, Jack Cooper. It's in Laguna Beach, so if anyone is driving, there are flyers on the reg desk which have the address and some directions, although someone have told us that the directions on there might not be the quickest, but if you're local, I bet you know how to get to Laguna Beach anyway. Really look forward to seeing you all there. So just be ready to get on the coaches after that event. Okay, I think that was all of the kind of logistics of the conference to deal with, and now we can get to the matter at hand. Obviously, any of you who've been coming to this conference or to any of our other conferences in Detroit, Mexico has been a major topic of discussion for us over the last couple of years with all the plants that are going up. And I guess what's new, not really new, but This year, the theory is kind of becoming the reality. Obviously, Honda's new plant in Celaya is at least launching or is operating. Mazda in Salamanca. Nissan has opened up in Aguascalientes. And then obviously Audi is building. And I think there's other things that we know are in the pipeline as well. And obviously those who are there are also investing in their production. So I think that the number we saw this morning, and we've seen it for a couple of years, is 4 million expected to be produced in Mexico by 2020 or maybe even before. That would be growth of at least 40% from last year. And we know that 85% or whatever the figure is exported, with a large share coming to the US, but also going to Latin America, taking advantage of those free trade agreements, and to Europe. So it's a global hub. It's really exciting. There's a lot of opportunities there. We know that logistics is one of the kind of strategic advantages of choosing Mexico. But on the same token, I'm sure, as we'll discuss, it presents some of its biggest challenges as well. So you have proximity to markets, and you have a pretty developed infrastructure, but it's not always going to be the same, obviously, as doing it in the US. So, I look forward to hearing from our panel who can give you, obviously, a lot better insight than I can on that. I'll introduce the panel, and just as a heads up, we are looking forward to your engagement, not like the last couple of sessions where I think there's been tumbleweed running across the floor whenever I've asked for questions. So get ready to make comments, to contradict what you hear, to challenge, and we look forward to exchange on that. We're going to start with a presentation from Sergio Gutierrez, who's the Managing Director and Head of Mexico for WWL. And then joining us, they'll also make some not a formal presentation, but also make comments before the Q&A. Steve Rand, the President and CEO of Amports, and Dennis Mans, Vice President of Logistics at American Honda. So let's get down to it, and let's get Sergio up. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. When I was invited here, I was delighted, especially because I know that there's a lot of sessions, summits, and conferences regarding Mexico, and I haven't had the chance to participate and to lead one of those. So honestly, this is my first time, so thank you so much for having me here. The other thing I was thinking is, okay, how can I share the flavor of Mexico through this audience? Especially because you know us pretty well by working with us in the US. So I just gonna run through a quick summary about what we do in Mexico, and then have a nice presentation or nice surprise for you guys. In Mexico City, or in Mexico, I'm sorry, as a country, we are managing 6 different operations at this moment. We work for Nissan, we work for GM. We also manage some railheads there with KCS, where we process cars for Chrysler, Mazdas, and Toyotas. To give you a perspective of how much of the volume is being managed by WWL, last year we managed about 1.4 million cars as a first point of receipt, which is great. And we installed about 4.5 million accessories to those cars. So from all the big numbers that we have shared here, or you have heard, we pretty much represent a good portion of it. We are about 1,000 people there, as I mentioned. So we're growing, and we are still in the growth mode since day one. And to give you something about the flavor, as I said, about Mexico, some of you have visited us from a business perspective, of course, but also from a pure tourism perspective. So today I would like to show you a different Mexico, and that's exactly what we are offering to our customers and pretty much to the market itself. It's going to take a couple minutes, and then I will come back to this podium. Okay. Well, I hope I was successful on sharing some of the flavor that we have in Mexico. As I said, we're really delighted as a country to have the opportunity to serve all the demand and all the markets, combining all the colors, all the flavors, all the emotions that you may know about it, but also the quality, also the good people that is well trained, well qualified to perform the activities, to be able to supply all those cars in here. So moving forward, that's exactly the status we have had till 2012. There you can see that we were placed in the 8th position from a global perspective as production itself, as manufacturing itself of cars in the world. The beauty of this is that all the information we have and all the communication we manage with all the OEMs are saying that by 2018, Mexico will be producing actually 4.5 million cars, which is a little bit more than what we have discussed. The idea about this is to be able to export 87% of it, and 2.81 of that will be export via rail, and also the difference will go via ocean. So having said this, this moment, I can tell that Mexico has 15 different manufacturing sites operating now, represented by so many brands. Pretty much we have Toyota, Ford, Honda, General Motors, Nissan as well. We have also Chrysler, Volkswagen, and we have solid information about Audi, that it was already shared in here, and also BMW considering to allocate themselves in there. We also we are receiving new players in the game, like Hyundai, which just recently started their operations, not from an OEM perspective, but to sell the cars in there. So there's a huge growth that is well represented by all the OEMs in there. Why Mexico is being so attractive, and why it's still so attractive? Basically, as I said, all these plants that we have there operating at this moment are also helping to attract more investors, much more auto investments to the country. The biggest ones that we just had were linked to the Mazda facility in Salamanca, to the Honda facility in Celaya, and also to the new facility of Nissan in Aguascalientes. The other important portion is the geographically great location that we have. It's pretty easy for us to ship all the way up to the US and also down to Latin America. There's plenty of room for growth. There's plenty of land available at any level. Of course, there's the challenge that we need a lot of investment in order to make it efficient. But as far as room, it's there. From a labor availability, the positive thing about Mexico is that we have been a manufacturing country for so many years that there's a generation of people well-trained that pretty much has been linked to the automotive business itself since they started working as their primary job. So what I'm saying is that there's people that has the proper skills to manufacture, to manage cars, and also to handle all type of quality needs that can compete with any other level in the world. The other beauty is that we have very good logistics partners, and we are really close as far as rail standpoint of view, trucking highway standpoint of view, good relationship with the government in order to allow us to move all these cars that are going to be are produced there and will be. So in a summary, the supply chain process that could come out from Mexico is pretty solid. Talking about challenges, after discussing this with all our colleagues down there, we conclude that the main challenges we have is infrastructure, or are related to infrastructure. First of all, our ports are so condensed, and I'm talking especially about Veracruz. They can manage a huge portion of the volume, yes, but it's not sufficient. And even when there's huge projects around, the time is not the proper one, so we are behind schedule. So this is creating tremendous opportunities of growth in order to use different ports like Altamira, like Lázaro Cárdenas, to develop in a better way actual ports like Acapulco or Manzanillo. And the other main constraint we have is, it was already mentioned in some other conferences, is the rail capacity. We know that there is plenty of investment on rail cars, on rail capacity itself. And so far, till this moment, we are in good shape. But the important thing is to mention that the real party, the real production volumes are not there yet. What I'm saying is that with the actual capacity we have, we are surviving in a good way, but definitely we need to catch up. Once the OEMs, all the new players, plus the ones that are there, starts ramping up and achieving all the big volumes, definitely we're going to be struggling. So again, this is the combination that we will have to be looking to solve: rail port activity and rail capacity. So, talking about opportunities, the first thing we believe is that we have to rebuild the whole network in order to work directly with the OEMs, to improve the planning, to improve the supply chain itself, to better manage the new model launching, to better manage the export points, or to actually increase the capacity of the actual ones. Here, we're talking about some major challenges, and we believe that, I'm sorry, that was my timer. That means that I'm done. All right. We believe that there's not going to be any single supplier that will be able to handle 100% of the new volume that is going to be there. Not from a rails perspective, or not from a port perspective, so not even from a truck hallway perspective. So what we're thinking is that we're going to have to break some paradigms in order to combine maybe volumes, to combine routes, to combine spaces, to really be able to offer not one supplier, but all the automotive industry strongest and better solutions in order to move all the product that is going to be there. So for those that were smiling in the morning when we mentioned about, or when somebody mentioned about combining efforts, combining real logistics activities, well, definitely, with the constraints we have, that's something that we're going to have to explore. And we're going to have to work closer with the OEMs to tell them the benefits and to show the benefits, and maybe to be able to do something together, combining all this product so we can supply it. Then, as I mentioned, we have to consider exploring different options like Altamira or Lázaro Cárdenas. Right now, the differences between those two ports versus the big one, which is Veracruz, are huge. And as I said, Veracruz is already so condensed that they're already behind schedule, and there's no more capacity in there. They have nice projects, but not for now. So right now we are exploring to build better and stronger possibilities in those ports. The other thing that we have to consider is that we need to start exploring short sea shipping solutions, also rail and ocean combination, and truck, rail, and ocean combinations as well. So for some players, this has been challenging because, of course, nobody wants to lose their volume, but definitely that will be the only way to be able to move all the volume up here. And finally, well, this means that we have to streamlining the supply chain itself, minimizing the handovers, which it has been already mentioned as well. The number of touches or people handling the cars right now, it's huge, and also that increases the risk of damage, the risk of failing on a transportation. So we will have to find a different way to talk or to speak the same language in all the companies that are going to work through this supply chain, so we can manage the same standards for all the OEMs to be comfortable with. And finally, well, we have to focus on securing the right labor. With all these new players on the field, with all these new OEMs. Of course, the labor is being an issue, and it'll continue being an issue because there's special skills on the managing of cars portion. When Mexico started to grow in this career, we realized that it's not simple, or it's not easy to drive a car inside a VPC or inside a railhead. So this is something we have to consider, and that's why, from a country perspective, we are offering better packages, better benefits to all the employees that works in this field, so they feel comfortable to stay with us, and they don't want to leave us. To find better job opportunities. So that's a key as well. And so far, that's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much.
I'll bring you up next, right? Yeah. Thank you very much, Sergio, giving us a great start there to all of the opportunities and obviously the challenges in Mexico as well. Again, I think we'll have plenty of questions to follow there. I think next I'm going to ask Dennis to come up and give us a bit of an overview of what's happening with American Honda down there in Mexico. And Dennis told me that as a kind of salute to the topic, he's going to do this presentation entirely in Spanish. So I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Muy bien. Good afternoon. I like it when Christopher says, "You're up next." So, because Stevie was supposed to be next. But anyway, I'm going to kind of share two lines of discussion with you this afternoon. I've talked with this group a couple times about Mexico and our experiences so far with our project down there. And that's one discussion I want to kind of touch base on today. And then the other one is, frankly, just talk about the whole Mexico experience with the growth and development that's going on down there. And you've seen some numbers, over the couple speakers this morning already, and there's just a lot of excitement and a lot of energy with Mexico going on right now within our industry. Whether you're representing an OEM or one of the vendor suppliers, there's a lot of positioning going on to, capture your piece of the action, right? And with the OEMs, because everybody's down there, and we've talked about this before, there's kind of a repositioning going on with the OEMs to expand their operations. And Honda's a good example of that. We've had an operation in, is this my other microphone not working? Just this one? Is that what's going on? Okay. But they, we've had a facility down in Guadalajara for 25 years or so, right, Thomas? And that was, more of a smaller operation. And then the facility we just opened 3-4 weeks ago is triple the size of the one that we've been operating for a number of years. And so from an expectation as an OEM, we have very high expectations of what, the Mexico is going to bring to us. But when you go down there and visit with the government representatives, some of the local supplier base, there's just, everybody kind of knows that this thing is going to continue and grow and expand and snowball. And that's why this whole Mexico thing is very exciting. So, and we're excited to be part of that. Now with that brings a lot of challenges. And in the short time that we've been open and in the short time that we've been making our visits down there, I've learned there's a difference between theory and fact, right? Because, we sit in our meetings, whether with you guys or internal, and you put your plans together about how you're going to develop something or construct something or achieve something, and that's the theory piece. And so now when the rubber meets the road, that's where the fact takes place. And so from that, I've learned two other things. One is you got to learn to be flexible, and the other is have a great sense of humor. So otherwise, I guess that's why they invented tequila down there. So anybody familiar with the tequila train? Anybody? Yeah, that's my kind of people there. So, but in the short time that our new facility's been open, the other thing you've got to learn is have a strong plan B in your pocket. And that's kind of what you and I do for a living every day, right? Whether you're an OEM or a supplier or whatever, we have challenges thrown at us, and And it seems like every day it's something different, whether it's U.S.-based or Mexico-based, and you have to have that plan B. And that's kind of the Mexico thing. Sergio just talked about the labor base there, and there's some, there's obviously some opportunity there. There's a lot of infrastructure opportunity. There's tremendous growth with this deal. But, there are some limitations, for moving this stuff out of there. And so I think for the OEMs in the room and the OEMs that are doing business and expanding their business down there, these are the day-to-day challenges we face. And so anyway, those are just some comments. Chris asked me just to make a few quick ones here, and now we'll bring up Steve, huh? Thank you.
Good afternoon. We skipped the video. We didn't make one. We had to sponsor. Louis keeps raising his rates every year and going to lesser class hotels. So we had to bag the WWL video. I had to nix that, but we're happy to be here. And yes, we're very proud to have sponsored every one of the conferences out here in California. And they just hit me up for Baltimore in the hallway. So wherever Gavin is, he's doing a good sales job because he said, hey, we're going to be there for the crab feast, and we hear you got a big port in Baltimore. We need you to sponsor. So I guess you can count us for the crab feast as well. A little bit about Amports. Most of you know who we are, but if you don't, we're a port and terminal operating company. We operate 10 deep water ports. We're the only port processor that has private land ownership. It gives us a very distinct advantage, we feel. We own 2 ports in Baltimore. We own the Port of Benicia, and it's really been an enabler for us to create shareholder value. We have the largest port processing footprint in North America. We're number 1 in an industry-leading market share. And this year we're proud, very proud, to win the GM Supplier of the Year for 2 consecutive years. GM has roughly 20,000 suppliers in their supply base, and there were only 64 awards given out this year, and Amports was a recipient, so we're very proud of that. Some exciting things going on in Mexico. We've been down there for quite a number of years. We developed the port processing business in Lázaro Cárdenas. We're very happy to have extended our lease in Lázaro. And so we're processing a little over 250,000 cars there. And we've already put an extensive amount of money into that property, so we're very happy to continue in Lázaro. We're in Altamira. It was mentioned earlier, but Altamira is a very clean port, has a lot of room for expansion. And it was mentioned about Veracruz kind of being at capacity. It's also not as clean from a contamination standpoint as Altamira, that you don't have the El Norte winds blowing as much up there. We're in Toluca, an inland facility, and recently we were awarded the Salamanca Mazda assembly plant to do backup plant assembly. We've got a great team in Mexico led by Ernesto Ibarra, who was 25 years with Chrysler. Mexico is the new China for automotive assembly. I like to look at it this way. It's yen protected, it's euro protected, and it's UAW protected. And we know from WW's presentation that it has an abundance of very good labor. And all the OEMs expect that the quality of the vehicles built in Mexico will be as good as anywhere in the world. In the first quarter 2014, 775,000 vehicles were produced in Mexico, and of that, 55% went to the US. So if you fast forward 24 months from now, we're looking to find a reliable and consistent conveyance for over 2 million vehicles finding their way just to the US, not to mention the other countries. This will take all the resources and all the assets we can put against it. It calls for multiple solutions, and obviously the fastest growing solution is short sea. And a couple of friends of mine said a couple of years ago, that short sea really isn't going to catch on. It's going to all be rail. And of course, Dennis Manns was one of the first to award a short sea contract, and so with what's happening in the rail networks, he's looking like a real hero at his company because his job and the jobs of all of you tasked with moving finished vehicles is to get cars to market and meet the sales goals. And right now, we've had a lot of headwind with the rail system. And the winter of 2014, the worst that anybody can remember in a long period of time, we learned that capacity has value. The rail system really grinded to a halt. There was as much as 150,000 finished vehicles behind plants in the U.S. that were to be moved domestically and some internationally without a ride. We were getting Chryslers trucked in from Detroit to export to the Middle East. And so there was a massive backup, and the railroads lost velocity. So the measure of the railroad train speed and their velocity is a key measure of their on-time performance. And it was all, for the most part, weather-related. When it gets real cold like that, the rail cracks, and there's slow orders. And so that sort of residual effect went through the whole system. And, one might ask if it was tough to serve the U.S. plants, how's it going to be to serve Mexico? Well, it's a long supply chain. I hear there's a lot of rail cars in Mexico today, but it's certainly a long supply chain down to Mexico, and we really don't move finished vehicles from the U.S. to Mexico. We move them from Mexico to the U.S. So you have a situation where almost exclusively the outbound traffic from Mexico subsidizes the round trip. The other lesson we've learned recently is no matter how disruptive the supply chain can be, whether it's Superstorm Sandy, the tsunami, the floods, we recently had some ILA disruption in Baltimore, OEMs want options. They want the flexibility in the supply chain, and that flexibility in Mexico means that we have to continually improve the rail. We have to find ways to get more rail capacity in the system. And I think you'll continually see a maturing short sea conveyance out of Mexico. A number of carriers have announced new services. There's actually a number of charter vessels available in the market. And I think that you might see charter vessels going to the Gulf from the East Coast ports as a means of subsidizing that. So there's exciting things going on in Altamira and Lázaro. We just opened up in Tampa. Tampa representatives are here today. It's about 2.5-day transit from either Veracruz or Altamira over to Tampa. And again, with the theme that capacity has value. Someone said earlier, I think it was Marty from AWC, that Baltimore's filling up. Well, all the ports are filling up. And so, again, on that theme that capacity has value, we're trying to reach out and sort of skate to where the puck is going to be and create that capacity to move finished vehicles. So we remain in that regard, port agnostic. So thank you for having me.
Okay, many thanks, Steve, and again to the rest of our panel for their insights and comments there. I think we get a real sense again of just what sort of potential there is in Mexico, but it's quite a big job ahead and some unknowns. On that, let's open it up for questions. Like I said, I'm expecting you to be a bit more participant. I think Dennis will buy a shot of tequila at the gala dinner if for every question that they ask. Is that what we agreed? Yeah. So
Double shot.
Double shot, in fact, even. There we go. First shot that way. Marty Colbeck.
Hi, it's Marty Colbeck from Auto Warehousing. Question is, there used to be a problem way back with traceability of rail cars once they crossed over the border. Has TTX been able to take care of that problem? Can they track the rail cars, where they're at, and the speeds of the rail cars in Mexico now, or does that still remain a problem?
I think either Dennis or Sergio maybe want to comment on that.
Is TTX here in the room?
Thomas?
TTX is here?
Help me out, Thomas.
They can track the rail cars.
Can we get a mic over here? Yeah.
In Espanol, please.
Yeah.
And Dave is in the room, by the way. But anyway, they can track information for Mexico with rail cars, and they have been improving things greatly. Certainly, even within American Honda, I'm going to tout our horn for a little bit. We also have the ability to get direct feeds from the rail carriers, and for the first time, we're actually tracking all the information south of the border. So that's something we're actively doing now on our network. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, David? No? We're good?
Muy bien, senor.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other questions at this time?
Shots.
Oh, here we go. There's a light in the front.
Thank you. Good evening. Roberto Michel from Miss Line. This is a question for Sergio. You said there's going to be a lot of cars being produced in Mexico, and we all know that's true. Mexico is number 5 production country in a few years. It's going to be, actually number 8 in a few years, is going to be 5th position. We all know the issues we're going to be facing, like production exceeding the actual port capacity, rail capacity, truck capacity. And I fully agree with you. We have to make a kind of synergies, not only between the players of this logistic chain, but also between the different players of the industry. We are now facing regulations, stronger and stricter security regulations, customs regulations, all kind of regulations, and unless we really partner up as a whole, as a players, as an industry, I don't see there's any effective way to overcome these big challenges we have in front of us. So I fully agree with you, Sergio. You really open up my appetite for Mexico flavor. Just want to eat an enchilada right now and the tequila shot that you just mentioned. But that's just my reflection. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment. Any other questions from anyone else want a shot of tequila at this time? Right here in the
I
corner.
think the tequila thing's working.
Yeah,
so.
I should have thought of that earlier. Actually.
I think it's more expensive than lottery tickets, though.
Yeah, Mike Riggs with Jack Cooper. I'm just curious, I guess, Dennis, you could represent the OEMs in this question, but you see the trend going from 2 million to 4.8, but we've been advised that a lot of those sourcing decisions are literally happening like this summer. Can you just comment on the timeline to get into this action? As you say, a lot of people are trying to get their pro rata share, but there's also some new players, at least to Mexico, thanks to Allied, our company as an example, but it's confusing as to when that opportunity window closes. And I was wondering if you could kind of give some guidelines on.
You're talking from a development standpoint, or just a...
I'll just say winning business, bidding business, new contracts. You're talking about trying to partner, Sergio, whether it comes from Steve, you, Dennis. There's a timeline for acquiring equipment, setting up operations, et cetera. And we've just heard multiple things. Some as long as you could take 2 years. Some is if you don't get it in this summer, you've missed the window. And
Right.
I'd just like to know your
Well,
framework.
you know, in our case, you know, we started with this 4 years ago. Does that sound about right, Tom? And it was, you know, one of those deals where, you know, we were given a direction that, you know, we were going to make something happen down there. And actually, we were brought in at the very first phase, which is a little unusual from an OEM standpoint, that the logistics side was brought in first. And so that was very exciting for us because we had a hand in it, you know, almost from day one. And so we probably spent, time flies when you're having fun, but like a year and a half or so, and you lock in your land and all that kind of thing. But as far as, you know, once the decision where we were going to go and what we were going to do and that kind of thing, you know, we made our supplier decisions a year in advance, you know, I think is probably the number. Because we have to give you guys, you know, whatever the supplier is, we have to give you ample notice to do, you know, get the people and the resources, all that kind of thing in line. And so, I mean, that was kind of the timeline that we had in place, and then we went forward from there. So, and it's worked out pretty well. I mean, it's you know, I don't care where you open a plant, you're going to have issues. You know, I don't care what startup it is. I mean, there's always going to be some challenges, but if I can get with you as a supplier and share with you my volumes and the whole plan, and now you and I can get together and put a good plan together, and hopefully it comes out relatively seamless. You know.
If you allow me, in order to support that comment, from a supplier perspective, I should say that window is already in the process to start getting, or to start closing, or to start getting closed. The reason I'm saying this is that because maybe a year ago, we were talking about Mazda and Honda operating there, and the reality is that now they're operating there. And from a supplier standpoint of view, a processor standpoint of view, they already took the decision about who's going to be working with them for at least the following 3 years. What I'm saying is that when Audi started there, that portion will be closed in months, and then there's not going to be room for changes, at least in the following 3 years. Same with BMW and same with all the others. Same thing just happened with Nissan and with us. So what I'm saying is that to reach that 4.5 million cars, definitely the time to take decisions is now. Otherwise, the first who arrive first, it'll be the one who tackle the opportunity and stay there for the following 3 to 5 years. So the time is now. And from a rail car availability, for example, or from a port standpoint of view as well, port perspective, is the same thing. The volumes are already there, not at the maximum level, but the decisions and the infrastructure needs to be placed now. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to move all that volume when they reach the final ramp up.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Dennis, you mentioned in your opening remarks you're learning the difference between, that there's a difference between theory and fact and the plans we make. Obviously, we spoke at quite length a little more than a year ago about your export plan, which is using both rail and short sea. I know it's a launch, and I know that this is not, things are still kind of ramping up, but can you give us any kind of examples of areas where you've had to change your expectations a bit, or things aren't quite going as you might have planned, and how you've kind of reacted to those?
There's lots of good stories. Not all of them I can share, but they, it's interesting. There's things domestically you take for granted from an execution standpoint, and we have a great supplier base with the processors and the car haulers and our rail partners and this kind of thing, and our short sea partners. And you have a associate base down there that they don't have experience with some of the car handling activities or manufacturing activities, and so it's created some challenges. Yeah. But again, some of that was expected, that we were going to have some of those issues, systems issues. Again, you have a startup in the U.S., you're going to have issues, and Mexico. And I said this a year ago when we kind of had the Mexico discussion. There's just added layers of complexity, and I think that will always be the case, down there. Vandalism is a big issue. I mean, we learned that with the very first shipment, the hard way, and fortunately there just wasn't a lot on that rail car, but those things happen, and you just have to adjust and go forward, and the local people, we're in constant communication with those guys about issues or expectations, and so we dialogue about what's happening or not happening, and so you're constantly resetting the adjustment button. Yeah. And that's something I think that it'll just be one of those continual operating activities for us anyway. Yeah. So
okay. Sergio, do you want to add anything to that, kind of from WWL, or perhaps with some of the Nissan activities that have launched? And I mean, you mentioned that some of the windows are closing, but with other uncertainties, whether it's rail shortages, then maybe the plans that are in place now may have to change quicker than we thought, or what other opportunities or emergency opportunities, solutions that might be needed. I don't know, just if you have any examples you want to share or insight.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to share the examples, of course, that we have with Nissan. We started working for that project kind of a year and a half ago, and the challenges at the beginning that we faced were not really linked to convincing the customer, because they were already convinced, they were already there working with us, but it was to bring all the proper talent, bring all the proper infrastructure in place, And for being a Mexican, I should say, to put the proper discipline and operational excellence processes in place were the most challenging things. So to consider to establish your operations or your services in there, the thing you have to consider is that, as Dennis mentioned, you will have to add a little extra effort on the discipline and on the processes you will have to consider to run the facilities, because we're not that experienced, so definitely needs to be a little extra attention on those. And that's basically the major challenge we have faced, to put the secure and the right processes in place to deliver the goods in good shape.
And Steve, what about from a kind of port handling perspective there? I mean, I imagine what maybe different processes or different measures you need to take, or in your Mexico operations, maybe as compared to your other locations in North America?
Well, I mean, the first issue, just to dovetail on what Sergio said, Salamanca, the Mazda facility, not that far from the Honda facility. It's sometimes difficult to get good supervisory labor. We're going through a little bit of a challenge right now with labor. A lot of good labor in Mexico, but certain supervisory labor is sometimes hard to get. You got to pay a little bit more than you'd normally want to pay to keep it. At the ports, interestingly enough, most of you read in Lázaro Cárdenas that the government took over the running of the port, and Michoacán is some say a failed state. So lots of activity down there that is, not very friendly. But we've never had a problem. We've never had a car stolen. I'm sure there's issues just like at every one of the other ports, but the security inside the facility is very good. So we've never had a problem in that regard. Got a great relationship with the OPI there. There's more infrastructure investment going into Lázaro. They're looking at a new port, Tuxpan, which is north of Veracruz. It doesn't have rail, but they're looking to expand. So the government wants to put a lot of infrastructure money in, and I think a lot of that will come in the form of private investment, private equity. There's a lot of cash on the sidelines and with private money, and really a shortage of good places to put it. So I would expect that Mexico gets a lot of cash, gets a lot of investment that follows all the assembly plants down there. But we sort of have the same issues down there that might crop up anywhere else. But safety and security really hasn't been a problem in any of the ports that we operate in. It's been pretty good.
Okay, that's interesting. Sergio, I mean, from your point of view, I think, what would you comment on the security issues? I mean, I think particularly from the view from the U.S., it would certainly have a kind of negative view of some of the things happening in Mexico, or some fears. And so, I mean, are those justified, or I mean, of course, to some extent. What's your take on that?
I guess I have to be very delicate with my answer, of course, because there's different aspects to face that problem. From a manufacturing or production standpoint of view, as Steve said, is not really affecting the growth of Mexico. Of course, we have had vandalism, especially in the rail portion, but it hasn't been that bad that could affect the efforts and the focus on bringing more volume and more businesses to Mexico. From a personal perspective, yes, I mean, it's a complicated situation. But I guess it's not that different from some other countries where we do business with. At the end, you just have to be conscious about it, and you just have to be aware that there are some areas that you don't have to visit or to be around alone. So from a foreign perspective, I should say that if you go with your partners down there, just follow their instructions, and you will have tons of fun. It's a regular place. It's a nice place to do business. And also, it's definitely a fun place to hang out. So just don't go to the areas that you're not supposed to be. And well,
The tequila's pretty good.
the tequila's pretty good. Yeah, we have. Absolutely. That's a good one. Yeah. So again, that's what I'm saying. I have to be delicate with my answer. I don't want to create some nervousness about it. It's happening, but the issues that we have from a security standpoint of view are internal issues and are linked, of course, with the drug cartels and stuff. So they're fighting against each other. They're not messing around with the civilians. So in order to do business, you can go there.
You just got to make sure you look like a civilian, though. So. But you know, let me jump in 1 second.
Yeah,
and I tell people this, you know, when we talk about Mexico and safety, you know, there's parts of LA you got to be careful. I mean, not all of LA is Newport Beach, you know. And so in Mexico's the same way. You just got to be smart. There's that extra level of thinking sometimes. And when we send people down, and you just got to think 1 or 2 steps ahead, and you know you'll be fine. But again, same thing. There's towns across the U.S. obviously where you got to do the same thing. You got to be smart. So.
Yeah. Particularly relevant for me, I'm flying there on Friday for some interviews and research, and somebody asked me what I'm doing for security, so I hired Louis actually to
So that's why you call me. Okay.
I think we have plenty of questions up here in the front. We could just start and we'll move across.
So my question is, what brand of tequila?
It's
Brother,
definitely
brother for you, whatever.
Actually, maybe a question for Steve. You mentioned that the equipment balance was an issue in terms of empty equipment going back down to Mexico. And I'm wondering, you know, we were in a session this morning next door on remarketing vehicles, and just wondering whether on the short sea or on rail, whether that's bringing some of the 40 million used vehicles from here down to Mexico. Is that anything the ports are ready for? Is that anything that's already happening? And maybe you could comment on that.
Well, I mean, the question would probably be answered better by maybe one of the railroads. You know, the UP is here. I wasn't in that session. I know they'd like to move product down, and you know, in terms of the ports, if you're talking about going to Mexico for consumption in Mexico. Yeah, so there's inland railheads, there's locations to offload that, places like Toluca, near Mexico City that have the capacity to do that on the Ferromex or the KCSM. So I don't think there's an issue in Mexico to receive remarketed cars, but anytime in the supply chain, whether it's trucks or trains, you know, they like something to go back rather than moving air. So to the extent that you know, remarketed cars or POVs are available, I'm sure that the railroads would embrace that. And I'm looking at Linda Brandel. She's right there, and she could probably give a better answer than I could.
We will come back. He just is requesting for Linda. Linda, do you want to respond?
Steve is correct. Anytime you can do a round trip in any kind of conveyance, it's a good idea, right? So remarketed vehicles going into Mexico go in pretty sizable chunks. There are some headwinds to making that happen on rail. So there are some big taxes if you're going to take used cars beyond border locations, right, that you've got to figure out, and you've got to make sure that you don't disrupt the cycle to a point where it doesn't make sense for the overall industry. But if there are if there's enough density in a corridor to make that happen, it is certainly attractive. But there's a whole list of things that you have to work out when you're taking used vehicles down into Mexico.
Thanks, and let's bring the mic back to the question in the front here.
While the microphone arrives here, just now from a Mexico perspective, let me add something to these comments. If the remarketing cars or the gray market grows in Mexico, the issue is that for a domestic consumption, we're going to see a reduction. Right now, Mexico is allowed to buy cars, I guess, 5 years old, and they are considering to make it to reduce it till 1. So definitely, that will affect the domestic consumption. So that will affect the production itself. So we kind of want and don't want that operation, of course, because at the end, that difference may not be that attractive for the OEM. So we prefer to leave it as is now.
I have 2 questions for my double shot of Don Julio.
There you go. We'll be waiting.
My first question is for Sergio. Do you, with all this growth in volume in Mexico, do you see or do you foresee where short ship would just not be enough? And if so, what's your plan B? And then on the destination side, right now we're talking about everything and trying to get everything out of Mexico. What are the plans for at the destination ports to handle all of that volume coming in?
Well, that's a heavy one. Yes. From our perspective, we are adding new trades and new routes to the pipe. The reality is that we haven't been that successful on being as rapidly as we need. We are also behind on that. What we are doing is to, of course, put some pressure, internally speaking, in order to show that the volumes are there and that we're part of this game. So we have to set up to place ourselves in first place in order to be able to provide the service. We have to convince our own organization, and that's why, for example, we just launched a new trade going out from Altamira that is supporting GM. It's brand new, it just started, and the idea is that we are able to prove that the volume is there so we can start putting the vessels there to be used. So the plan is just to prove it, and the organization will say yes if the volume is good enough.
Thank you. You asked a question about the destination ports in the U.S. You know, one of the things that's happening on these short sea shipments is, for the most part, they're processed in Mexico. So whether it's WW or Amports or companies like us, if the accessories are being added down there. Some of these short sea shipments where they come to Jacksonville or Baltimore, they kind of touch and go. So to the question of, you know, are you out of capacity? You know, it's hard to build a church for Easter Sunday, but these Mexico units kind of touch and go. So they go pretty much to the load lines and right to the dealers. So they're not, they have a quick velocity and a quick turn time, so they're not dwelling at the ports that long. So the East Coast ports are able to handle more of the short sea because there's not a high dwell component.
Thank you. I think we had another question on this row.
Hi, 2 questions. How sustainable, in the panel's opinion, is short sea, and how competitive is it in transit time and cost?
I mean, the answer is competitive across the board. I mean, it's the thing is you have to have volume. You know, it's pretty much everybody in here. Everybody's business model is built around volume. So the volume creates frequency, and frequency, you know, solves all issues. So competitively priced, the volume, you know, gives you the lift that you need, and you know, that's the plan, and it's, you know, we're pretty optimistic how it's going to pan out. So. It's good. I mean, actually, I think we're right. Thomas is giving the high sign, so we're very competitive. So right now, it's way better. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, it's 2.5 days to the Gulf ports. You know, whether it's Houston or Freeport or Tampa, it's roughly 2.5 days. Call it 3.5 days up to Jacksonville. Maybe 4 days to Baltimore.
I think the key is how quickly can you get out of town, and so. But if you have the volume there, you know, you've got the frequency going, and that's kind of the model we put together. But I think the key is getting out of there in the first place.
In addition to that, I'm sorry. I guess the right way to see to answer your question is linked to the equation based on the volume. It's not the same thing for a Nissan that produces 1 million cars, or almost 1 million cars, and exports pretty much 70% of that, to use the short sea and the rail, if we were planning to use that for the shorter volume producers. Of course, those two different players are looking for some different things. So I guess for a major producer, the largest producer in Mexico, it makes sense to combine both. In some way, they fulfill the pipeline in all ways. And so maybe the time that they lose by the short sea, which is not that much at all, is recovered by having the pipeline totally full. And that also helped the other players to be able to use the rail infrastructure that is in place. So it's kind of based on the volume that each OEM will be exporting to the U.S.
Sergio, just to kind of follow up a little more on the sustainable side of the question in terms of how, from a business point of view for WWL, I mean, I think your services in and out of Mexico to the U.S. are still linked to larger triangulations to Europe or Middle East. Do you have any shuttles at this point? Is that something that you think could be financially feasible to have, you know, dedicated carriers moving back and forth? I think that's maybe there is some service now that it wasn't before.
I guess in our case, when we have to use or when we like to use railroad, and also when we own the vessels itself, it's a tricky question, it's a tricky game. Right now, it's a great moment to use short sea, and actually we are shipping some units using that method. But the reality is that once the rail catch up, of course it'll be faster, and it's much more in control than, I mean, just shipping directly from the facility to the actual rail head to distribute the cars than going to the port. So at this moment, definitely sustainable, but it'll depend on how rapidly the rail catches or recovers the control. Once they have it, once they have all the pipeline ready, which is not going to be that far, of course it'll be challenging for us to prove that we are offering the best solution from a sea perspective.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. I think we do have some other questions from an. So there's a hand up on this side of the room earlier. Maybe not. No?
No more tequila.
Yeah, you're sacrificing your tequila. There's definitely a side business here in drinks logistics, I think, to tonight's event. Although I do have to remind you that mañana I can't push the start time forward, so, you know, might want to control yourself a little bit tonight. Let's see, I'm sure I have a question. I think we have time for one or two more before we move on to our voting. In terms of, maybe this is for Sergio, kind of looking out, unless one of the railways wants to comment directly, where do you see, when they catch up and as the market grows, where do you think some of the capacity shortages may be? Is it sort of in the bi-level, tri-level mix? Is it actually physical capacity, or is it to the ports, or is it the border? I mean, just looking out a couple of years as the production rises, where do you see bottlenecks potentially?
Based on the volumes that are being produced now, and pretty much the ones we handle, in our case, tri-levels is the most complex thing. For example, on the other hand, we have VW, where it manages pretty much everything in Automaxes, and they are not fighting against each other to get those. But in our case, yeah, tri-levels is the challenging resource that we need. The good thing is that with this new equity from the TTX that is being in place, and now Mexico is participating, definitely we have seen tremendous improvements. Now we learn how to read the equity, how to not to control it, but to follow it, and definitely that helps a lot. Now, based on what any OEM, based on what every rail has invested in those, it's the quantity of equipment that they are eligible for. So that helped us a lot. So we're controlling that with this.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions from the audience? Maybe kind of a last one on my side, because obviously most of what we're discussing here, for obvious reasons, is the kind of international aspect, the import-export, the movements to the U.S. But in terms of the domestic distribution and market, which I'm assuming WWL has involved within as well. I mean, how would you describe the competitiveness of the sort of haul-away carriers in Mexico compared to maybe the US? Are they well developed? Is it fragmented? Is there big or small players who kind of dominate the market? Just maybe some color on that.
You mean domestic in Mexico, right?
Yeah, Mexican distribution. Yeah.
Well, right. I mean, at this moment, there's 2 to 3 major players from a truck hallway perspective, and they pretty much own the whole thing. They are really attractive for short distances where the rail is not that attractive for the time and the cost itself. But the important thing is that the truck hallways companies doesn't have 100% of the capacity that we need. So that's also another opportunity for the rail to better propose different rates or different processes in order to be eligible also for short distances. So at this moment, the competition is really hard between the truck hallway companies, these 3 major players that I mentioned. But sooner or later, when the volume is there, we're gonna be in need of using even railroad for domestic distribution as well.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else want to make a final point or question? Here we go.
I was wondering if it might be possible to use some kind of a rail or truck shuttle to get the vehicles across the border where they could be then shipped with domestic resources here.
So I think question about using truck across the border, correct?
I don't think trucks, I mean, most of the OEMs are so far south, I just don't think the truck's a good option. And, but there's a lot of rail going on, obviously, so.
I could be wrong. I think Chrysler might do some of that from the van plants. I think moving by truck. And I was talking to an OEM earlier, in case it's secret, I won't mention the name right now, who's looking at moving trucks, you know, decked, whatever you call it, decked, from Mexico by road. So that I think, obviously, maybe not so much on the light vehicle side, but on the commercial vehicle side, it seems like that's an option. Okay, I take it that's going to conclude the Mexico part of this panel. I think if anyone kept count, I think we had about 10 shots of tequila that we have to see tonight. So look forward to those. Before we move on to our voting, let me join everyone in thanking the panel for their time and discussion. It's certainly not the last we'll hear of Mexico, I'm sure, even during the event. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the interactive voting. So if I think we'll remind you again to try to log on using your smartphone or your iPad if you want to do that. Just to kind of note on that, if you're pulling up the screen, don't hit play, don't start streaming, don't start playing the stream because you know it'll have some interference on the actual polling. And a note for people listening outside of the conference, there's about a 30-40 second delay in what I'm saying and what you see. So if you want to participate in the voting, scroll down and look at the poll, as opposed to listening to the question, because when you'll be able to answer in real time, in time with us on the poll, but not based on the actual video, if that makes sense. For those of you in the room, don't worry about that. So if you are logged in to the live site, you just scroll down below the social stream, and there will be a polling section, which will populate with questions shortly. Okay. So pretty simple. I'll read out the question, and you'll be able to select your answer right on the screen. So these questions are all supplied by sponsors. First question is from Voith, and it's what's the most important for an OEM in selecting a supplier? Would you say that it's partnership with the supplier, price of service, or technologically advanced service? And I'm not sure if it's just on mine where I can't see the option for the first. No, there it's there. It's all there. Yeah. So if you can start making your selections. Nifty little music for you. So let's see the results. So 44% say that the most important factor in selecting a supplier is the relationship and partnership with the supplier, which is quite positive, obviously putting it well above price. Quality of service is a pretty close second. Sort of interesting that, unless I'm reading it wrong, none of you think that technology, being really advanced technology is the leading factor, which goes a little bit in line with some of the things we discussed in the IT session earlier, where some of the state of the advanced IT does seem to be passing parts of this sector by. But anyway, at least we're building good relationships. So let's move on to the second question. This is provided by JMN Logistics. So the question is, leaving aside price, this is a similar question obviously, but leaving aside price, what's the most important in selecting a supplier? Is it reputation and relationship? We have some different options here. Capacity of company-owned assets. Is it CSA safety scores? CSA is well, I was given the acronym and now I forgot it, but it's a regulatory safety initiative. And claims percentage, or claims percentage. So obviously this is from a haul-away perspective, I would say. If we can vote now. So, overwhelming again, we're coming back to the relationship, although here the word reputation was sort of added there, so there's a bit of a nuance. Capacity well below, so I think that might not have been precisely what people were feeling earlier in the winter, but at least people do seem to understand that in the long run anyway. It's really more about relationships than it is necessarily about the technical side. So, our third question is provided by CTM Worldwide. Looking at the challenges today, or looking at challenges, what's the biggest one in North America today? Is it a lack of capacity? Is it quality of service, which might be lacking? Is it a lack of visibility? Or is it inefficiency, so empty miles, empty returns? Vote now. So, overwhelmingly, despite capacity coming distant second to reputation and relationship here, obviously with what's been happening, maybe no surprises there, the lack of capacity has been the biggest issue for vehicle logistics in North America this year. Okay. Next question is from ICL. And it's what's the most significant obstacle to generating an accurate delivery ETA, estimated time of arrival, is real-time visibility across all transport modes, operational consistency, communication between OEMs and suppliers, or lack of communication, I suppose, not enough capacity for peaks of demand and seasonal changes. So if you can vote now. Results, they're in line with the others now. Real-time visibility across all transport modes. So again, looking beyond the seasonal capacity issues that we're seeing this year, there's still the lack of visibility. Which is interesting that nobody thought that having technologically advanced solutions was important. So maybe there's some relationship to where our priorities are, and we're not necessarily seeing the full picture. Next question is from WWL. So, what's the next greatest thing a supplier can do for an OEM? Is it to take out more cost? Is it to drive collaboration among OEMs and among suppliers? innovate and innovate and innovate. There isn't one, it's the same old challenges and responses. So vote now, please. Answer, 38%, innovation. So focus on innovation here. It's kind of close with collaboration, and obviously, but again, cost not even in the top two. And presumably, you know, since it's anonymous, you're not just, you know, saying that just to look good or to not insist on the price. So that's encouraging, I think. Yeah. Okay, that was obviously the last question. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's always interesting to get a sense of what the room is thinking, what the industry is thinking on some of the issues of the day and long-term things. We're now going to wrap up. We're going to, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have coaches leaving here in about 10 minutes or so from upstairs, going to Laguna Beach to, was it 7 degrees? So please join us and yeah, come claim your shot of tequila. Thank you.